There's a room inside you filled with blueprints, plans for books never written, businesses never launched, bodies never trained, languages never learned. The walls are covered in vision boards and half-finished dreams, and you visit this room often. You walk through it like a museum of your own potential. You feel the electricity of what could be. Then you close the door, and you do nothing. This is the architecture of the ambitious but lazy. Not lazy in the way the world understands it, not idle, not unmotivated, but paralyzed. Caught between the gravitational pull of a magnificent vision and the strange, suffocating weight that keeps you still. You are the person who can see the summit clearly but cannot take the first step, who speaks in futures but lives in waiting, who carries the energy of 10 people but the follow-through of none. And before the world judges you, before you judge yourself, understand this: you are not broken, you are conflicted. And conflict, when understood, is the doorway to transformation. You were likely a child who dreamed loudly, who was told you could be anything, who was praised for intelligence, for potential, for promise. But somewhere along the way, the encouragement became pressure, the possibility became expectation, and the space between who you were and who you were supposed to become grew unbearably wide. So you learned to live in your mind, because in your mind, you were already successful, already accomplished, already enough. Reality, with its demands and its failures and its slow, grinding work, became the enemy, and inaction became protection. This is where it begins, not in laziness, but in fear dressed as procrastination, in perfectionism disguised as preparation. You learn that as long as the dream stays a dream, it cannot be ruined. As long as the book is unwritten, it cannot be criticized. As long as the business is unlaunched, it cannot fail. And so you became a curator of potential rather than a creator of reality. You hoard your ideas like treasures too precious to risk, and the cost is quiet. The cost is a life lived in rehearsal. The psychological term for this is approach avoidance conflict. You are drawn toward the goal and repelled by it simultaneously. You want success, but fear the vulnerability of trying. You want achievement, but dread the exposure of imperfection. Your ambition says go, your anxiety says wait, and in the space between, you freeze. This is not character weakness. This is your nervous system protecting you from a threat it perceives as real, the threat of being seen and found inadequate. And here is the paradox that defines you. Your ambition is both your greatest strength and your deepest prison. The same imagination that allows you to envision extraordinary futures also convinces you that anything less than extraordinary is failure. You don't lack drive. You lack permission to be mediocre on the way to mastery. You don't lack ideas. You lack the ability to let an idea be imperfect and still pursue it. Your standards are so high that they become a ceiling, not a floor. And you live beneath them, looking up, waiting for the moment you feel ready enough, worthy enough, certain enough to begin. But that moment never comes, because readiness is not a feeling. It is a decision made in the absence of readiness. The people around you may call you lazy. They see the hours spent scrolling, researching, planning, consuming. They see the potential wasted. But they do not see the battle. They do not see how exhausting it is to carry a vision you cannot actualize. How depleting it is to live in constant cognitive dissonance, believing you are capable of greatness while producing nothing. How much energy it takes to maintain the fantasy of the future self while managing the shame of the present one. You are not resting. You are at war with yourself, and wars are exhausting, even when they are invisible. Neuroscience offers a window into this conflict. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning and long-term thinking, lights up beautifully when you imagine your goals. You feel the dopamine rush of possibility, but the moment action is required, the amygdala, the brain's fear center, activates. It perceives effort as threat, discomfort as danger, and it floods you with resistance. What you experience as laziness is often your brain's attempt to protect you from the emotional risk of failure. Your nervous system has learned that stillness is safer than exposure, and so it keeps you small. But here's what the fear does not tell you. You cannot fail at something you never attempt. But you also cannot grow, cannot learn, cannot become. The safety of inaction is also the suffocation of it. You are protecting a self that never gets to exist, a potential that never gets to breathe. And yet, there is something sacred in your sensitivity to failure, something ancient. You are wired to care deeply about how you are perceived because, for most of human history, belonging meant survival. Rejection meant death. And so your brain still treats social failure, creative failure, professional failure as existential threats. This is not irrationality. This is biology. But biology is not destiny. Awareness is. The spiritual teacher Alan Watts once said that the only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. But you are standing at the edge of the dance floor, watching, analyzing, waiting for the perfect song, the perfect moment, the perfect version of yourself to arrive, and the music plays on, and life happens, and the gap between your vision and your reality widens. Healing does not begin with motivation. It begins with honesty. You must admit that you are more afraid of being seen as mediocre than you are committed to growth. That you are more attached to the identity of someone with potential than to the discomfort of actually developing it. That you have mistaken preparation for progress. And that comfort, even uncomfortable comfort, has become your drug of choice. Growth looks like starting before you are ready. It looks like producing work that embarrasses you. It looks like showing up inconsistently and then showing up again. It looks like choosing action over analysis, even when every part of you screams to wait. It is the practice of doing the smallest possible thing, not because it is enough, but because it is real. Because it exists outside your mind, because it breaks the spell of perfectionism and puts something, anything, into the world. Emotional maturity is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to act alongside it. It is the recognition that discomfort is not danger, that failure is not death, that imperfection is not unworthiness. It is the quiet, radical decision to let yourself be a beginner, to be clumsy, to be seen in the middle of becoming rather than only at the end. And this is where the transformation lives, not in the grand vision, but in the humbling, ordinary act of starting. You must learn to separate your worth from your output, to stop using your ambition as a measuring stick for your value, to understand that you are not your potential, you are not your plans. You are the person living right now, in this moment, with all your contradictions and all your capacity. And that person is enough to begin. Not enough to have already arrived, but enough to take one step, and then another, and then another. The Buddhist tradition teaches us about the concept of beginner's mind, Shoshin. It is the practice of approaching each moment with openness, with curiosity, without the weight of what you think you should already know or be. You have been living with experts' paralysis, convinced that because you can see the complexity, because you understand the difficulty, you must wait until you have mastered it in theory before attempting it in practice. But mastery does not come from thinking, it comes from doing, from failing, from adjusting, from trying again. The beginner's mind does not ask, "Am I ready?" It asks, "What can I learn?" And here is the truth that no one tells you: ambition without action becomes resentment. Resentment toward yourself for not living up to your own expectations. Resentment toward others who seem to execute effortlessly. Resentment toward the world for not recognizing the greatness you know you contain, but have never manifested. This resentment is a slow poison. It turns your dreams into sources of shame, your potential into a weapon you use against yourself. And it keeps you locked in the cycle, because now you are not just afraid of failure, you are carrying the accumulated weight of all the times you have already failed to begin. But what if you reframed the entire paradigm? What if ambition was not about the destination, but about the direction? What if the goal was not to become extraordinary, but to simply be in motion? What if you measured success not by outcomes, but by engagement, by whether you showed up, by whether you tried, by whether you allowed yourself to exist in the uncertain, imperfect space of becoming? This is not lowering your standards. This is raising your humanity. This is choosing presence over perfection. The poet Rumi wrote, "Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. It will not lead you astray." But you have confused love with attachment. You are attached to the idea of success, attached to the fantasy of who you will be when you finally arrive. But love, true love, is found in the process. in the daily, unglamorous act of creation, in the quiet discipline of showing up even when no one is watching, even when the work is bad, even when you feel like an imposter. Love is not the dream, love is the doing. And so the question is not, how do I become less lazy? The question is, how do I become more honest? Honest about what I am avoiding, honest about what I am protecting, honest about the fact that my inaction is not a flaw in my character, but a strategy my psyche developed to keep me safe. And then, with that honesty, the question becomes, what is one small, imperfect thing I can do today that moves me from fantasy into reality? Not tomorrow, not when you feel inspired, not when the conditions are perfect. Today, now, this moment. Because this moment is the only one that exists, and all your grand visions live in a future that never arrives. But the work, the real work, can only be done now. You are standing at the crossroads of who you have been and who you could become. One path is familiar. It is the path of waiting, of preparing, of protecting your potential from the world. It is safe, it is comfortable, and it leads nowhere. The other path is uncertain. It is the path of risk, of exposure, of letting yourself be seen in your imperfection. It is terrifying, it is vulnerable, and it is the only way forward. The ambitious but lazy are not lacking in vision. They are lacking in self-compassion, in the permission to be human, to be flawed, to be in process. You have been holding yourself to a standard that does not exist, and in doing so, you have held yourself back from the life that does. So let this be your permission, not to be great, but to begin. Not to have it figured out, but to figure it out as you go. Not to wait until you are ready, but to become ready through the act of trying. You are not too lazy to succeed. You are too afraid to be imperfect. And the moment you make peace with imperfection, the moment you choose motion over meditation, everything changes. Maybe the goal was never to live up to the vision. Maybe the goal was to stop using the vision as an excuse and start building something real, something messy, something alive. Not someday, not when you are finally enough, but now, as you are, imperfect, uncertain, and utterly, beautifully capable of taking the first step.